Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Chamber's monthly membership meeting presented by Medical Associates Clinic and Health Plans Midwest One, Q Casino, and the TH Media. We are so thankful that you've joined us today. We're looking forward to a great session with Congresswoman Hinson. But before we do that, we'd like to also recognize our platinum sponsors who help make this event possible, in addition to our ultimates. Once again, Medical Associates, Midwest One, Q Casino, and TH Media are our presenting sponsors, our event sponsors for today. Anderson Window and Doors, Cartograph, Collins Community Credit Union, Digital Dubuque, Envision, Fidelity Bank, Forge Social, Grand River Center, Grand River Medical Group, Holiday Inn, John Deere, Mercy One Dubuque, Stonehill Communities, Town Square Media, Unity Point Health Dubuque, and US Bank. Let's give them a virtual round of applause. Yay, sponsors. So we are honored to have with us today Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, representing Iowa's first, and may I say best, district in Congress. A native Iowan, Ashley grew up in Des Moines, and after receiving her BA in broadcast journalism from the University of Southern California, she moved to the Cedar Rapids area to work and raise a family. She currently lives in Marion with her husband, Matt, who is a small business owner, and their two sons, Max and Jax. For nearly a decade, Ashley was an on-air reporter for KCRG TV in Cedar Rapids. I watched her every morning faithfully. She traveled throughout the state to cover issues that mattered to Iowans and tell their stories on air. During her time as a reporter, she won multiple accolades, including 2 Midwest Regional Emmy Awards and recognition as both an RTDNA Health Reporting Fellow and a Waypoint Tribute to Women honoree. Her reporting career inspired her to serve Iowans in a different way by running for a seat in the Iowa State House. In 2017, she became the first woman to represent Iowa's 67th district, which includes Hiawatha, Robbins, Cedar Rapids, and Marion. During her tenure, she was a fierce advocate for taxpayers, helping to cut taxes and rein in irresponsible spending. She also championed workforce development and rural broadband initiatives and helped make childcare more accessible to working parents all across Iowa. Ashley fights every day in Congress for Iowa families, business, farmers, and of course, all our chamber members and business community. Once again, on behalf of our chair, Darren Harmon, our board of directors, our chamber staff, it's such an honor to have Congresswoman Hinson with us today to give us her congressional update, kind of her perspective, her first 100 days in office, and we will have questions at the end. So make sure to put those in the chat feature because we want to make sure that we have that time to converse with the Congresswoman. With that, please give a warm chamber welcome to Congresswoman Ashley Hinson.
Well, thank you so much, Molly. And can you all hear me okay? You can hear me? Great. Well, it is great to be with you today virtually, wrapping up a very busy week here in Washington, D.C. I'm excited. I'm always excited to get back home on a plane to Iowa. To see my husband Matt and my boys Max and Jax, and I get to FaceTime with him while I'm here, but as you know, it's just not the same as being mom in person. So I'm excited to get home. So for those of you who I haven't met with recently, I did want to share a few quick updates on my work here in Congress so far. First of all, it was really important to me to have our offices up and running on day one so we could start serving Iowans immediately. I'm in the business of customer service, much like all of you. So we have offices open in Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, and of course Dubuque. Our office is right there on Main Street. Our DC team here in Washington is primarily focused on the legislative efforts in Congress, going through all of the bills. And then our district team, as you know, is the first stop for all of that casework, dealing with the IRS, dealing with passports, you name it. Lots of issues being solved in our Dubuque office, but we're working hard together to make sure that we're delivering for Iowans on all fronts. Just want to talk a little bit about my committee assignments. I am honored to serve Iowans on both the House Appropriations Committee and the House Budget Committee. Definitely gives Iowans a seat at the table throughout the entire federal budget and spending process. A lot of what I'm doing here is pushing back and telling Iowan stories about how policies and proposals that I believe would be harmful for our communities would actually impact you. I also think it's really important, even if I'm speaking out on things I don't agree with, to support things that I can find common ground on when possible. And so that's one thing I've been really prioritizing here in Washington, D.C. I'm always getting input from Iowans on what matters to you, what's working for you, what you're concerned about, how I can best deliver for you solution-wise here in Washington, D.C. So I would encourage you, if you haven't written down our office numbers yet or subscribe to our newsletter, please do that so you can reach out as well and give me your feedback, because that really matters. Well, one great example I just wanted to highlight that I think would be of great importance to Dubuque specifically, a recent problem that we solved over at the Dubuque Regional Airport, and I think Todd's on this call today, but earlier this year, we heard from the regional airports, both in Dubuque and Cedar Rapids, about an issue that they were having with the Federal Aviation Administration. Basically, it was disproportionately impacting our smaller rural airports, like many in Iowa. The FAA, of course, was saying it was safe to get on Americans could get on a plane and fly, but they weren't flying out their own engineers to inspect critical infrastructure projects at our airports, which meant they couldn't move forward. So not only were those delays wasting taxpayer dollars, but I was hearing directly from small businesses, local guys, who are saying, hey, we rely on these contracts with our airports and we need the business. So for example, a construction company in Dubuque had a bid for a construction project at the airport that included over 10,000 labor hours and 11 employees for the majority of the 2021 construction season. Huge impact. They had projected this project being 16% of their annual revenue, and they had already purchased some extra equipment in anticipation of the project. So when you think about the delay coming from the FAA, that's a real bottom line impact to the local economy. So our office worked with the FAA, and we sent a letter to the administrator and to the DOT secretary as well, Secretary Buttigieg, and said, hey, we need to move these critical projects along. It's good news not only for the airports, but for our small businesses and their employees, just getting things back to normal. And by the way, just wanted to flag this too, when the FAA administrator came before our appropriations subcommittee, I kept the pressure on them. We want to make sure that we won't have this kind of disparate treatment for our smaller airports going forward. So they know we're on it, and we're watching them and how they do their business. Our team, again, is always here to help if you're having a challenge with the federal government, and I would encourage you to reach out to our office. During my most recent district work week, spent the day out in Dubuque, went to go visit a couple of great spots in the community to hear about the issues that they were facing and how I could best help in Congress. Most recently, I went to the DePaco Voices building in the historic Millwork District just to see the positive impact the investment has had on the area. I was super impressed. I know when I met with Terry and the crew downtown a few months ago, we talked a lot about the Millwork District, and I've been talking about that too. Molly, we're getting lots of good mentions in here in Washington, D.C. about all the good work you're doing back there too. I also went to the Mississippi Museum, National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium. I got to pet the stingrays, definitely a first for me. So I know I'll be coming back with my boys again sometime soon. Just an absolutely awesome spot in Dubuque, and they're bringing tourists in obviously over the summer. Learned all about the new exhibits coming down the pipeline. So it's great. It's important work and fun work. I guess that was really fun stop for me to be in Dubuque doing that. So looking for ways to continue to support the museum. We're actually writing a letter right now to try to support some grant money to get that to come to the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium as well. And then prior to my most recent visit, just a few weeks ago, I was at Hills and Dales in Dubuque, and also had a very informative tour of Lock and Dam 11. I know our lock and dam system is absolutely critical for our local and our regional economy. So that's why I've been advocating here out of our official office through the appropriations process for community project funding for improvements to the system along the Mississippi River. I have had the opportunity to hear from a lot of different constituents, a lot of different groups in the Dubuque community about this. And so I'm looking forward to using that feedback, always trying to use that feedback I receive and the stories I hear back home to serve our district effectively here in Washington, D.C. Another issue that I'm hearing a lot about from the business community right now specifically is just the worker shortage. I've heard from dozens and dozens of businesses across the district who have those help wanted signs on their doors, but you can't find workers to fill open jobs. And I think it's true. It's largely because the government has just been paying people to stay home instead of going to work. And that discourages people from actually applying to those open jobs. So I applaud Governor Reynolds' decision to end the participation from Iowa on the additional federal pandemic unemployment benefits. Iowa does have more jobs available than it does unemployed people right now. Anyone who wants a vaccine can get one. I'm vaccinated. I've been encouraging everyone to get vaccinated, and I'll continue to work to make sure that that is the case across the state. And I visited Crescent Community Health Center several months back as well. We've been pushing to make sure all of our community health centers in Iowa get additional vaccines. So I thought that was a great win to see Dubuque actually get on that list, and several of other community health centers as well. We absolutely need to be focusing on policies that encourage Iowans to get back to work so that our economy can get back on track again and we can truly see that return to normal life. Iowans are ready. They're telling me they're ready. I know you're probably hearing that from your employees and probably your own families. So ensuring that we have those good policies in place, and then of course standing against policies that I believe will hurt our chances of economic growth in Iowa is absolutely a priority for me here in Congress. I fought hard against the federally mandated $15 minimum wage. I know that would decimate our businesses in Iowa. And I also voted against huge spending packages that predictably caused the highest inflation we've experienced in a decade. I was sounding the alarm on the wasteful spending, non-targeted spending that was a part of those packages. And I think, well, unfortunately, we're seeing the ugly head start to rear itself in our economy. Another example of standing up against harmful policies, I'm doing everything I can to stop OMB from changing the definition of a metropolitan statistical area. Obviously, that would box Dubuque out of critical resources. You're right there on that edge in terms of population. So I will continue to keep the pressure on the administration on this issue specifically. And I know my team has been working to keep you all in the loop on that every step, but we'll continue to fight that one. And then just kind of in closing, I'm very cognizant of the specific issues that businesses in Dubuque are facing as we go to reopen our economy. Heard from multiple businesses in the area who had issues with the shuttered venues operators grant program. So I actually wrote to the SBA requesting several fixes to the program, so small businesses in the district can actually access the resources that they need to be able to open their doors. That's a priority for me. So with that, I would love to hear your questions, your feedback. You know, it's a goal of mine to get our economy back on track, get you all back to normal as quickly as possible. And I want the federal government to be a help, not a hindrance in moving our country forward. So it's an honor to be with you, and it's an honor to serve as your Congresswoman here in the 1st District. And with that, we can take some questions.
Thank you, Congresswoman, so much. And on behalf of the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much for your leadership and your voice in Washington, D.C. I can tell you firsthand that the Congresswoman and her team are so responsive. And when they say that they're going to work on those issues, and they are holding the committees and the other legislators their feet to the fire and putting the pressure on behalf of moving our economy forward, they're doing just that. And they're working hard every day on our behalf to get our economy back on track and going. So thank you so much. We're so appreciative. I'd like to invite my colleague, Ryan Semp, who is going to facilitate a discussion. Some chamber members have provided questions in advance. I know Ryan has a couple questions he wants to kick off with, but once again, please include your question in the chat feature, and we will make sure that we engage with the Congresswoman and have a great conversation. So Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Molly. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, gotcha. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Congresswoman. How are you? It's great to have you here with us. First, I just wanted to say thank you for all the work that you have done so far in Congress. I think everyone on the call should realize, everything that she just talked about happened in the last 4 months. So very, very busy time up there, but she has been working very hard on behalf of Iowans here in Dubuque and all across the state. The first question I wanted to ask you is about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, something you and your office have been really engaged with us on. So as you know, that opened about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the rollout went pretty smooth. But Congress allocated $28.6 billion to the program. When it opened, it ended up receiving about $70 billion in requests for funding. So we're wondering kind of what your thoughts are on the program, the future of the program, and if you plan to support some additional funding to help meet that extra need on top of the original $28.6 billion.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate all of the challenges that our restaurant community has faced in the last year. And I mean, I was right there with many of you trying to do the takeout orders and continue to support restaurants through the pandemic last year. One of the concerns that I had just in general with the program was the priority groups. It was pretty darn narrow in who could actually apply. So one of the things that I think if we do move forward with additional funds or an additional appropriation, I would like to see more people be able to apply for that, because I think what we saw was that not only did the funds go pretty quickly, but it was pretty narrow on who could actually apply. So that's one thing that I would love your feedback on. If you're on and you're a restaurant owner, or if you work at a restaurant, we would love to get that feedback. I think my biggest, I guess I probably share this with a lot of you, is we need to get Americans back to work. We need to get Americans feeling comfortable to go out to restaurants again. I think in Iowa, that's not as much of a problem as it is in some other places, but certainly whatever we can do to help encourage people to continue to support the restaurant community is a priority for me. So we'll continue to look at it. I just want to make sure that programs, and I referenced a couple obviously that I voted against, and it was because I believe they were not as targeted as they needed to be, and so that's where my main focus will be in making sure we get the relief where it actually needs to go.
Great, that's great to hear. Like you said, the restaurant community was on the front lines along with those shuttered venue operators grant recipients. Those were two of the biggest industries hurt, and so doing whatever we can to help support them through hopefully the end of this pandemic soon is very important. So thank you for that. Before we go on to some of the audience questions, I'll ask just one more here from us. You recently introduced some bipartisan legislation with, I believe it was Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. And it's to fix an issue with PPP retroactivity. Could you talk a little bit about that and just kind of share your work in that space?
Sure. Yeah, so it's the Ppp Equity Act, and as you all know, there were funds appropriated last year several times for the PPP program. But in working with Congresswoman Spanberger, we understood that there was basically just a gap in retroactivity. If you'd already applied for the loans, then not only when it came to the gross versus net revenue, there were many loans that were not eligible for forgiveness and through that process. So when we looked at that kind of gap, we determined that it just needed a fix. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of it. It fixed that because we considered it an equity issue for farmers, ranchers, and sole proprietors specifically. So that's what the PPP Equity Act does. And we have, actually, she and I did a Facebook Live together. Was that last week? I think it was last week. Weeks blend together out here very quickly, but if you want to check out my official Facebook page, we did a question and answer kind of session to talk a lot about the nuts and bolts of the bill and kind of the genesis of it. But no, I think it's a good example of some bipartisan work that's happening out here that maybe doesn't always make the 5 o'clock news, but there is a lot of that happening. And ironically, our offices are literally right next to each other, so we run into each other pretty frequently. But her district is very similar to Iowa's first district, lots of small businesses, lots of farmers and ranchers. And so it just made sense for us to work together on it. And so we're continuing to work on trying to get that bill through. And again, I support targeted relief, and I think PPP is a great way to do that and get those resources where they need help.
Excellent. No, couldn't agree more. And it's just great to see this kind of bipartisan work coming from our member of Congress. That's one thing we try to take pride in at the chamber, is being very bipartisan. And so we love to see that in our representatives in Congress as well. Hopping into some of the questions that we have popped up. First one is actually just more of a thank you, a statement. So Todd Dalsing over at the airport just wanted to say thank you for all of the work and assistance your office has done with the FAA. So he's on the call and just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Todd.
Next question. So Gretchen Tucker asks, what is being done to be more inclusive on the recent farm bill that was passed?
On the recent farm bill, I'm not sure. We'll probably be working on the farm bill. I know that there are lots of discussions just in general through all of our hearings and about how to be more inclusive. I know the last farm bill was 2018. The next one will be 2023. So happy to look at it. I can tell you a little bit more about a piece of legislation that I worked on that I think will actually really help. When you talk about priorities for the administration, I know climate is one. I think, from my perspective as a Republican, our farmers need to be at the table, and they have great ideas for how to support some of those initiatives. And so I supported the Precise Act. I filed that piece of legislation, introduced it here in Congress, and it supports our farming community with access to grants under the EQIP program and the CSP program for precision agriculture equipment. That's very, very expensive. And it also has provisions to support access to rural broadband. So that's one thing we're doing to help provide more access to those tools for everyone in Iowa, and make sure that Iowa farmers have a seat at the table in a lot of those discussions going forward.
Great, thank you. And one thing I think is, always important to remember, that even in the city, in Dubuque, supporting the farm economy is important to all of the Iowa economy. So, even if, you're not directly working in farming, that kind of stuff directly impacts all of our businesses in the state's economy. So very important.
Well, yeah, you talk about like the farm economy and all the jobs that it supports outside of maybe just the actual physical farm, the ag business community, and what I mentioned earlier about locks and dams and how important that is. And that's why one of my community project funding requests is for Lock and Dam 25, because it's we need to modernize the entire lock and dam system. And I see, we have good bipartisan support for that, with working with Sherry Bustos from across the river. So our districts, obviously, we're working on getting everybody up and down the Mississippi to engage on that too, because I do think that provides better support for everybody.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. You think of there's a very large push to I think the buzzword is a more resilient supply chain, and I think that's a very important part of it. We're very lucky, and it's unique here in Dubuque to have access to the river, and really that gives us access to the world. And so making sure that we kind of support those facilities, whether it's the lock and dam or the ports, very important as we look into the future. Next question we have is from Aaron Sandman. Is there anything being done to prevent businesses, colleges, airlines, etc., from requiring proof of vaccination? So I think she's asking about like vaccine passports.
Yeah. I don't think that there's been any actual legislation brought to the floor here. I'm against vaccine passports. I don't like that idea. I think it's an infringement. But I think what we're seeing is a move more toward some just responsibility on the part of the honor system, so to speak, for people to do that. I don't think it should be a condition of employment. And I think that there are ways and accommodations that we can be making to make sure we're making sure people feel safe coming back. And many employers are already doing that. They're making reasonable accommodations. I've talked to many of you who have really upped the ante over the last year to make sure that people feel safe coming back to work as well.
Great. Before I ask this next question, I'll just remind everyone here again that if you do have a question, make sure you put it in the chat or in the questions box, and we'll make sure that we ask it. Next question we have, really just, you talked a little bit about some of these far-reaching plans, a lot of spending being proposed in Congress right now. Specifically, the American Jobs Plan and American Families Plan call for a lot of additional taxes and revenue raising strategies that would negatively impact the economic recovery that's going on right now. I know that you do not like those taxes. We really appreciate that, but I'm just wondering if you could expand on that a little bit and talk about where you see these plans going in the next few months, and do they have legs? Are they going to get done?
Yeah, well, and I know that there is an appetite on both sides of the aisle to move forward with an infrastructure plan, for example. And I think that that's something I've heard from a lot of constituents that they value that too. So for me, I'm absolutely ready to come to the table on that. Where I'm focused is trying to make sure that we actually focus on physical infrastructure. There's a lot of spending in these bills that's completely unrelated to infrastructure. A lot of it is spending that goes out a very long time with very little accountability. That is concerning to me because obviously it's Iowa taxpayers who are on the hook for that. And so when I say I'm fighting for taxpayers, I mean it, because I think that having accountability is critical. And a lot of these pieces of legislation, we haven't really seen the bills yet, but what we've been seeing proposed haven't mentioned accountability. So that's really going to be a priority for me as I look at this. I don't think our corporate tax rate should be as high as communist China's. Right now, they're trying to convince other countries to stifle economic growth to stay competitive, so that the United States can stay competitive if we raise our tax rate. I think that's completely the wrong way to go here, and we need to be focusing on returning more taxpayer dollars, because if there's one thing I know, my husband was a small business owner, they're going to take the money and reinvest it in their business. I know many of you are doing the same thing. The profits are being reinvested in your people. When you talk about deductions going away for investing in technology and equipment for your businesses, that creates better worker productivity, which I think ultimately makes you more profitable and provides more opportunities for Iowans. So I'm absolutely watching those potential tax hikes very closely. It's probably the #1 issue I hear about when I go on the road right now. People are very concerned about the stepped-up basis proposals, inheritance tax proposals, capital gains, and then just the general corporate tax rate as well. So not to say we shouldn't be having conversations about targeted policy, but I want it to be targeted. And from my mind, when I heard a lot of the descriptions about these plans, it was fluff and free stuff and not a lot of focus on what Iowans actually need or want. And so that's what I will make my priority here.
Sure. No, thank you for sharing that insight. And what you talk about with making sure that we're investing in infrastructure that's going to work for Iowans. I think that is very important for us as we're looking at this. We don't want to be, like you said, we don't want to be sending our taxpayer dollars to help projects in other places. We want to keep that here. One thing we've heard, and the U.S. Chamber has talked a lot about this, is an emphasis on where that funding comes from, and they've talked a lot about instead of taxing people on the back end on profits or income, thinking about user fees. So think about like gas tax and maybe some sort of thing to go along with that on the electric vehicle side. And so I'm wondering if you've heard a lot about that too.
Well, that's something, obviously I chaired the Transportation Committee in Iowa, and one of the key issues we worked on was the equity issue when it came to electric vehicles, because you are seeing an increased use. And the data we had from the Iowa DOT, if I'm recalling, it's been a while since I looked at it, but it was a significant increase in electric vehicle usage by the year 2038, 2040. Obviously now with the administration pushing toward a more electric vehicle model by 2035, that timeline's been escalated. So, you know, I'm proud of the work we did in Iowa to actually tackle this issue already. And we did a graduated registration fee, enhanced registration fee to capture what they're not paying at the pump. If you're going to use it, you should pay for it. That was kind of my motto in approaching that legislation. And I think that's absolutely critical as we're looking at the electric vehicle structure going forward. So that was actually one of the things that I mentioned on my call with Secretary Buttigieg a few weeks ago. I had a one-on-one call with him, got to talk to him about a lot of issues. Obviously, he's been to Iowa a lot, so made sure that I flagged that for him, that we have a good policy in place, not only for electric vehicles, but other alternative fuels as well, including hydrogen. So I am well versed in it, and I made sure that the secretary understood that it's a priority for me as well as we're talking about these projects.
Wonderful. No, that equity in users, I think, is especially, like you said, with the increased emphasis on electric vehicles, is going to be very important, especially over the coming decades, as we're likely to see sort of a more transition into electric vehicles and that sort of transportation. So, so I'm going to look real quick. We don't have any additional questions right now. It's probably because we just covered everything.
And I'll say this too, you made a joke about what we've done in 4 or 5 months out here, but we have been very busy. I want to give a shout out to my staff. I know many of you have had interactions with them as well. You know, we've introduced a lot of pieces of legislation that I think really matter to Iowans. And so if you're curious about it, feel free to contact our office, but we're over 100 pieces of legislation that we've introduced. And a lot of them support the business community. So I just can't say enough thank you for your interactions with us and letting us know your feedback. It's crucial. And thank you as well to the Chamber for all you're doing to help connect us with people who I represent, and I care what you think. So I thank you for facilitating these kind of conversations because they're really helpful.
Well, we appreciate, you know, just how open your office has been, and you know, you want to thank your staff. I'll say too, you know, Brittany in your office, as well as Patrick and Claire here in Dubuque, have been excellent resources. Anyone who's on the call, yeah, if you have something that you need some help with, I highly encourage you to reach out to them. Brittany also actually shared her email in the chat, so chat if, sorry, not chat. Attendees, if you want to look in the chat, you can find the information to contact her office if you need assistance with anything. And as always, you can also reach out to us and we'll connect you as well. And Zach's here too, so I'm just gonna copy and paste this real quick while I'm talking. There we go. So
Everybody's
the last thing yeah, exactly. Last thing I'll say here is just everyone on this call should know that we have a real go-getter in Congresswoman Hinson. She is really working hard for Iowans and really playing a big role in Congress. She is new, but she's not new to the process or to the work, and so she has done a great job, even only being there for 4 months. So don't think that just because she's new or because she's in the minority that she's not going to be able to help you. She has shown us time and again that she is able to. So with that, I'm not going to drag this out or keep people on the call, but just one last, you know, kind of virtual round of applause for Congresswoman Hinson for being here, and thank her. And we look forward to working with you in the coming months and years.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to talk with you and to serve you in Congress. It's a great honor, and reach out if there's anything we can do to be helpful for you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. On behalf of the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to our presenting sponsors, Medical Associates Clinic and Health Plans, Midwest One Bank, Q Casino, and the Telegraph Herald. Have a wonderful day. Make it a Chamber of Commerce day, and have a wonderful weekend. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.